Welcome to the news feed. Do not miss the latest. Putin, who spoke about the collapse of Russia, accused the West of what is happening, because the processes of internal Russian collapse are approaching a critical limit, and Russian statements about the nuclear apocalypse are another bluff. The former foreign minister said this of Ukraine. Vladimir Mr. Stubb, when the president of their Russian Federation says that the Russian Federation may fall apart. Do you think he really believes in it, or is it not directed at this despite everything that is written about him, that he is inadequate, that he does not understand what is happening? I think that he understands very well what is happening and to what state of actual catastrophe he brought Russia, which until recently he presented as if not the first or not the second country in the world, and the further the more terrible, and he sees it. He does not understand that the continuation of this policy will really lead to a lapse of this under-empire. That is why already, more than once at no, and you just quoted this other pseudo-president, Medvedev, they are putting forward as a thesis for discussing the nuclear apocalypse. Look, we can even go down this path. In fact, this is another blackmail. This is a bluff. This will not happen because they understand that this day of the use of nuclear weapons will become on their last day. Russian ex-president, deputy chairman of their Russian Security Council Dmitry Medvedev wrote an article published on February 27 in the newspaper Izvestia that in the event of a threat to the existence of his country, the issue would be resolved along with their issue of the existence of all human civilization. Russian leaders had previously threatened the West, saying perhaps in Armageddon and their apocalypse. Western leaders emphasize that their support for Ukraine does not aim at the collapse of Russia, while accusations are indeed heard in Moscow of imperial policy towards Ukraine and other neighboring countries. Mr. Biting, let's get back to Putin's statement about the fact that it is likely that the processes that were launched by Russia's aggression in Ukraine can lead to their collapse of the Russian Federation. If speaking realistically, what do you think? What exactly can really entail these disintegration processes in the Russian Federation? Is a military defeat on their territory of Ukraine enough for the process of disintegration the Russian Federation has started up? I don't really share your Mr. Alexander's very neutralist position. In fact, because if a country is an aggressor country, if a country commits international legal crimes, if it has committed a crime of armed aggression, then it's worth considering. Does the world community need a country that has violated everything that could be violated in international law? Mr. Bitingly, I will simply note that we are talking about the fact that we are trying to analyze the processes and, so to speak, not to call for certain shifts, not to cause them. You probably understand what I mean by I understand. But we must also demonstrate the obvious and correct approaches and clearly the end where there is an aggressor, where there is a victim of aggression, where there is a country that does not want to hear other civilized countries, and so on. But besides, just if we are now talking about the military defeat of Russia in Ukraine, this, in my opinion, will be a very serious catalyst for the internal political processes of Russia. Because, based on its imperial and Tsarist tradition, all these leaders of Russia should be winners. You see, Putin himself launched this idea because Russia is a country of winners, and so on, and suddenly this Tsar is losing. This means that the processes of internal political shifts begin immediately. This is, to a certain extent, a powerful political earthquake that will require a change not only in the regime, maybe their system itself, and then their moment will come that they don't want to think about in the West yet, and it's very in vain, for it's better to be prepared for the process recession due to internal reasons than to shrug and talk later. But we didn't foresee it. Better to predict, and there are a million of these reasons in Russia. For some reason, in the West they continue to believe that Russia is, as they say, some kind of single nationality, if I may say so, country. Yes, There is nothing like that. There are many national features, so many territories that have their own characteristics. The really Siberians speak of themselves not as about a part of the Russian people, but as Siberians. If we even dig a little into modern history, even history after the collapse of the USSR, we will see that the ideas of Siberian autonomism arose there, detachment from Russia and etc. Unfortunately, the West does not want to pay attention to all this. They think that Russia is a monolith. This is the same mistake that was before the collapse of the USSR. For some reason everyone believed that the USSR is forever the same thing, a really colossal mistake that our Western partners are already need to start correcting. Mr. Stubb this statement by Putin in which he actually admits that the prospect of the collapse of Russia is realistic under certain conditions. Is this a manifestation of his weakness, or can it be perceived as such in the eyes of his supporters who perhaps believe that defeating Russia is impossible? Defeating Russia is possible, and entirely our heroes are proving this today on the battlefield. The fact that Putin began to talk about the collapse of Russia only indicates, in my opinion, that the processes of this collapse of their internal Russian are approaching a critical limit, and this seems to me, on the contrary, a very serious signal for the internal Russian audience that we need to be as united as possible. But at the same time, this is indeed a sign that the West is hearing that Putin may be starting to rethink the situation, and perhaps right now there is a potential opportunity to offer Putin, if he still wants to extend for some period of time. You get out of Ukraine. You reject a kind of agreement and forget about all your houses in the form of talk about the fact that Ukraine, neutral, demilitarized, never joins NATO, and we give you the opportunity to live a little more within this still integral Russia, or if not, then goodbye. Then the collapse of your great motherland awaits you. I think that this could be an interesting turn in the current situation. Meanwhile, the ex-leader of their DPR militants, Igor Bizela, complains to the FSB officer about the incompetence of the Russian army and their incompetence of the state leadership, and after him Gerasimov, and then hang half of your FSB, then we'll start fighting, said the militant. According to him, the leadership of the Russian Ministry of Defense is hard to perceive the strategic marches of their Ukrainian army. All these Gerasimovs are stupid. Our president, a brush with a moustache, Peskov, is the same double as Medvedev. We have all the leadership are then morons, added by Zlia, earlier secretary of their National Security Council. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, put your finger up and subscribe to the channel.